The slap heard around the baseball world. Tommy Pham slaps Joc Pederson in the face over a dispute stemming from a fantasy football league that the two were in together. So we're going to talk about that and the Giants, what almost was a disastrous weekend in Cincinnati, but they managed to salvage it a little bit. So we'll get into all of that next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And where we start is with the slap heard around the baseball world. Tommy Pham, we heard, this was before the game on Friday. This dude was just stewing this whole time since these guys were in a league, fantasy football league last year together. And Joc Pederson said some things in a text message that upset Tommy Pham. And all this time, many months later, what was that, 9 months ago in like September, October of 2021, Tommy Pham has just been waiting for this moment for Joc Pederson to show up in Cincinnati or for the Reds to come to San Francisco. He's just waiting to see him. And he walks up to him and he smacks him in the face. And I mean, what else can you say? The dispute was over if a fantasy football league that the two were in together. And also, Joc Pederson apparently made fun of the Padres, the team that Tommy Pham was on, and admittedly, a team that deserved being made fun of, right? They hyped themselves up so much, and the whole expectation going into 2021 was that the Padres would contend and compete with the Dodgers for the NL West crown. They would finally be a team that could challenge the Dodgers, and the Padres ended up finishing below 500. And Joc Pederson even showed reporters the GIF that he sent making fun of the Padres. And it was a harmless little thing. It was like 3 weightlifters with each team's logo, Giants, Dodgers, and Padres above the head. And they like threw a weight up in the air. And for the Padres guy, the weight hit him on the head and crushed him to the ground. But it was just like a harmless, funny GIF. And Pederson says that he knew many players in the league and they were on the Padres. And so it was just kind of lighthearted fun, but Tommy Pham took it super personally. And also there was this incident where Joc Pederson stashed someone. I don't play fantasy football, so I don't know if the rules are different, so I don't totally understand the situation as well as I would if it was fantasy baseball. But Joc Pederson stashed someone on the injured reserve and picked up another player. And apparently you're allowed to do it if the player is ruled out for the game, I guess, even if they're not injured, if they're just ruled out for some reason. And Joc Pederson did that, and Tommy Pham didn't like it. So to get down to the point, and we are also going to talk at length about this weekend's games, and there is a lot to say, and I don't want to just completely ignore that and make you think we're not going to talk about that. The Giants got shut down by the Reds in this series, and they were thankfully able to pull out a win on Sunday in the finale. They were close to being swept by the Reds. They were being no hit through 7 innings. So we'll talk about that as well. But the overall point to make about this incident is that it's highly inappropriate by Tommy Pham. I mean, here's the thing. This guy, I didn't want to say this too much in the offseason because you're talking about a guy's reputation, and I don't know him personally, and everything I know is just kind of word of mouth and what you hear. But Tommy Pham has a reputation, a bad one, as being just kind of a not great clubhouse presence. And when we talked about the Giants possibly being interested in Pham, I'm pretty positive, I said numerous times, that I wasn't sure he would be a cultural fit. Again, it's hard for me to say definitively because I don't actually know him. I've never spent anytime around him. But he has a reputation, and this is just another notch in the belt, and it's a very clear one. I mean, there's video of this incident. It's far away, zoomed in. Somebody knew, I think, what Tommy Pham was going to do because someone was recording it. I want to know what the context is there. And if he told people in advance he was going to do this, which is another indicator that Tommy Pham has some issues. If he wants people to watch, he's going to go walk up and smack Joc Pederson in the face. So it's highly, highly inappropriate, and Pham was suspended for 3 games for the entirety of the series. But the Reds do come into town, into San Francisco, at some point this year, not too long from now, and he'll probably be playing then. So that'll be something to watch. Obviously, hopefully it's over. I think, Pham would have to be pretty dumb to not have this be over. But also, in a way, it's funny, but it's really not funny, but also just the way that Pederson described it to the media. And I mean, he was just as dumbfounded as the rest of us that this is something that Pham held on to for this long and felt the need to walk up to him and smack him in the face. Joc Pederson was walking around in the outfield barefoot with the breathing coach, right? He was doing his grounding exercises and breathing and like meditation essentially before the game. And here's Tommy Pham who wants to fight. So just a ridiculous circumstance. And Tommy Pham, he's not going to stick around. I mean, nobody's going to want to have to deal with this from Pham, and it was a little surprising how long it took him to sign this offseason, and I think we're seeing why. And it's a 1-year deal for him. It probably hurts his trade value to an extent because he's already got that reputation, and what team, if it's marginal production, what team is going to want to take on the personality deficiencies of Tommy Pham? So he kind of just cemented his legacy as a not great person to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if this contributes to him falling out of favor in the league and losing his teams aren't going to be that interested if you come with baggage like this and your production is marginal to begin with. You're going to have a tough time finding a job. So that's what I would expect would happen here, and highly inappropriate stuff, but also mildly entertaining, I suppose, if we're being honest. And I would check out the interviews with Joc Pederson both times when he described what happened and that it had to do with the fantasy football. And then the second time when he said he also sent a GIF, and he even showed reporters the GIF, and he quoted the group text. He's like, this is what I said, this is what he said. And basically Tommy Pham just took the stuff way too personal. And even if you took it bad, you shouldn't just hit somebody for it. So that's my take on that. So coming up next, I want to get into the games themselves. It was looking like an utter disaster. It really was. Like I was this close to coming on here and just burying this team and saying it was a pathetic weekend, pathetic showing in Cincinnati. But they did manage to salvage a game. So we'll kind of give you some of the pathetic takes, but also the relevance of them winning a game, heading out to a new city on this long road trip. So we'll get into all of that in just a minute. But first, our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted to see what all the hype was about among just in general out there, but also among us Locked On hosts. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all of the things. It's lifestyle friendly whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and it costs less than $3 a day. You can support your health, and it costs less than that very expensive cold brew habit that I know some of us, including myself, have. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB-network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/MLB-network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, as promised, I want to get into these games and what was almost a disastrous weekend for the Giants. They were being no hit into the seventh inning of Game 3 of this series, on the verge of being swept by the Cincinnati Reds, whose record going into that game yesterday was 16-30. Going into the series, their record was 14-30. So the Giants were playing one of the worst teams in the league, and the Giants looked overmatched by some of these guys. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the Reds pitched well. And the thing is, and I wasn't really like totally caught up on what exactly was going on with the Reds up to the minute, but coming into the year, I knew that they traded away and they didn't re-sign some of their best players like Nick Castellanos, and they traded Sonny Gray, and I think they traded another significant pitcher, if I'm not remembering exactly in this moment, but Sonny Gray, Castellanos, and others. Oh, Wade Miley, they put him on waivers and the Cubs picked him up, but he was one of their better pitchers last year. So I knew they tore down a little bit, and it was really frustrating for their fans, but also I thought they had some underrated talent still on that team, especially in the pitching staff with Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle, who we saw on Sunday, and he pitched up to his capabilities on Sunday. That's the thing, is he can be really good, like truly good. And on Friday, Giants were facing a rookie, Graham Ashcraft, and I didn't really know much about him. The only thing I noticed kind of digging through his minor league numbers and scouting report was that he was an extreme ground ball pitcher, like extreme, 70% plus in the minors for ground balls, and league average is like 40%. So that is crazy. And I thought, that type of guy can have success in any given game if he's just getting the ball on the ground and you're not able to get that big hit in the air. But what I didn't know about Graham Ashcraft is he was going to come out there throwing 100 miles an hour. I thought sinker ball guy, he's probably throwing low 90s. Doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. I thought low 90s sinker. But no, he's throwing 100 miles an hour and getting ground balls as well. So he pitched great, as did Tyler Mahle. So that was part of what happened. You really did run into some good pitching in the series. And on the flip side, I mean, the game on Saturday was a game that was, to me, the most frustrating because the Giants had base runners all over the place and they just could not get that big hit. And actually, a couple of times they got a big hit with, quote, runners in scoring position, which I don't like that term because, if you're a home run hitter, everybody's in scoring position, including yourself. So the idea that you're only in, quote, scoring position if you're on second base is thinking about singles, which I don't like to think that singles are the types of hits you should be getting. I like extra base hits. And then if you're on first, you're in scoring position. So anyway, the Giants came up with a ton of runners on, including runners on second and third or both. And they couldn't get the big hit, except a couple of times they did. And two of those three times, I think they had a hit with a guy on second, third, or both. They didn't score a run, including to end the game. Wilmer Flores battled and down by a run, Joey Bart on second base. He got a hit, and Joey Bart was thrown out at the plate trying to score. So it was just an extremely frustrating game, and it was the second straight loss to the Cincinnati Reds. The Giants have been losing a lot in the last month or so. I think that loss moved them to 10-14 in May. So now they're 11-14 with the win on Sunday. But there's a lot to get into here. Just overall, the offensive struggles in the series, the decision to send home Joey Bart, which I'm just going to tell you now, I thought was the right decision. I've talked about this before, but I'm sure plenty of you listening have never heard me say it because I know not everyone listens every day, even though you absolutely can and should. We do these episodes Monday through Friday. But the thing about sending a runner, I just have to say it now, is that it's not the only way that it's a good send is not if he's safe, right? Like the idea that if he's out, it's a bad send is 100% false because the probability of the next guy getting on base, and with two outs, it would have been bases loaded. That's the probability we should be paying attention to. On base probability, percentage, right? Brandon Crawford's on base percentage is around 300. So maybe against right-handed pitching, it was a righty on the mound. Maybe it's a little higher, 320 or something. That means the probability of the next guy not making it out, getting the run home, getting on base somehow, some way, home run, single, walk, hit by pitch, whatever the case, was about 30%. And so Therefore, technically speaking, if the runner only has like a 35% chance of being safe, it's still the right call to send him home. So you don't need it to be 100% in order for it to be the right call. If it's 50-50, it's an easy send. So that means 50% chance he's getting thrown out at the plate to end the game, and still it was a easy send. And so that's kind of the logic behind it, and I know that the Giants think this way as well. Gabe Kapler defended the decision using the same kind of logic, and it just has to be said. I think that a lot of times we mistakenly think, oh, guys are getting thrown out at the plate, bad send. That is not how to think about it, especially with 2 outs. With 1 out, it's totally different math. But with 2 outs, I suppose like the probability of a wild pitch and or passed ball also needs to be added in, but those don't happen very often. So even if it's like a 5% chance of that, you just add it to 30% and you've got 35%. So anyway, I thought it was you got to make the guy make a throw, and we saw in the next game on Sunday, they made another aggressive send, and the throw home was offline. It went over the catcher's head, and the run scored easily. So that's the thing. It looks bad if he's thrown out and they make a perfect throw, but guys sprint at a speed of about 30 feet per second. So all it takes, if he's out by 30 feet, you're literally just 1 second of misplay away from scoring. And so to me, it was the right call, even though he was out by a mile. And so that's that. But overall, just the Giants struggling offensively in this series, it was very hard to watch. And what's crazy is that on the season, they've actually hit pretty well overall when you just kind of context neutral, forget about the fact that they've been streaky, and in a lot of games, this has definitely emerged as a theme. They have scored like 2 runs or less, or 1 run or fewer, or less multiple times, like a lot more than usual. And then they've also had a lot of games where they've scored a lot of runs. But I don't really think that that's a predictive thing. I think that it's just a bit of unfortunate sequencing in terms of when they're scoring their runs. It is important to be more consistent and to not score like 2 or 1 or 0 runs in a game. Ideally, you're getting 4, 5, 6 runs every single night, at least. And it just hasn't been that way for stretches for the Giants. But I don't think that's so predictive. I think you just look at the overall offensive output by your team, and that's generally what you should just expect the production to be in any given game. But it hasn't been that way. But overall, it has, right? The offense has been strong overall. I think we talked about this just the other day. They've got a team weighted runs created plus that is, I think, 112. Yeah, 112, which is 12% above league average offense. It's actually 5th in Major League Baseball, believe it or not, right? It doesn't feel that way, especially after what we just witnessed. But in this series against the Reds, who aren't a good team, and it's a very offensive ballpark, the Giants just couldn't get anything going. And overall, the pitching has actually been a problem, but in this series, the pitching was pretty good. Carlos Rodon did not have his best stuff, but Alex Wood gave up a 3-run homer in the first inning in his start, but then pitched very well the rest of the way. It was, I think, the best that he's thrown all year after a rough first inning. And then Alex Cobb on Sunday just continued to do what he's essentially done all year, even though it hasn't seemed like that at times. Basically, he pitched the same as he's pitched all year, but the results were just better this time. It's kind of interesting and cool that on the broadcast and in all the articles you read, they're pointing out that the expected numbers versus the actual numbers, they're talking about what we talk about on this show all the time. So that's really cool to see that it's becoming more mainstream, some of these peripheral numbers, right? But Alex Cobb, I mean, the peripherals continue to be elite, and the results just were not. But yesterday, the results matched up with the peripherals, and he just stranded some runners. He got some hard hit balls that were right to people, which the Giants haven't seen a lot of lately. And he just pitched great. And overall, the numbers for Cobb suggest someone who could be really, really, really good. And I continue to believe that's what we'll see if he just look at the stuff, right? He's throwing 95 mile an hour, 2-seamers with huge movement. He's able to like wrap them around the plate and throw them for strikes, looking like balls and then coming in and hitting the plate. And he's got a big, pretty good breaking ball, and his split change is like 90 miles an hour, and it's nasty. So I continue to be high on Cobb. He's got this 2-year deal, I think with a 3rd-year option for Cobb. And so he's going to be around a while, and to me, it looks like a really good signing. I'm looking past the surface numbers and just at the peripheral numbers, and he's a guy I want signed for this team for multiple years, and he is. He's got 2 years plus a third-year club option. So that's a good sign. Coming up next, we're going to continue to talk about this. I want to just go into a little bit about how pathetic the San Francisco Giants looked and kind of what my takes were going to be if they had gotten beat in this Sunday game or even no hit, because it looked like that was a possibility. All right, as promised, I want to just put a bow on this conversation and talk about the state of the team. We have played more than 45 games at this point. I did say all along that it wasn't until 45 games that we can really take our first hard look at the state of the team, and they were not playing well at that point. But overall on the season, it must be said that they are still 25-21. I, at the 45 game mark, looked at what was their record in 2010, 12, and 14 at the 45 game mark, and you might find it interesting to know that their average win total in those 3 years, by the way, the 3 years in which they won the World Series, was 24.33 wins. So in 2010, they were 23-22. In 2014, they were 24-21. And in 2014, they were 26-19. And in 2022, this year, they were 24-21, which is the same record as 2012. So you don't panic at this point in the season. They're still above 500. They're 25-21 with a plus 18 run differential. It's still a solid record and run differential, and it's still very early in the season. We have like 70+% of the season still to play. And a lot of these numbers, like I'm saying with Cobb, I expect if you give him 70% of a season, these numbers are going to stabilize and the performance is going to the results are going to get much better. And it's not just Cobb, it's Rodon, it's also Webb, it was DeSclafani before he got hurt, Alex Wood to an extent. And the offense, like I said, overall, the offense, the weighted runs created plus as a team is 5th best. And so there is actually a lot here that indicates to me that given a larger sample, all of that could put them in a position to be quite good as the season continues to go on. And so it didn't look that way, though, did it? Like, watching these games against the Reds, it was pathetic. I mean, it was just abysmal performance. But that's baseball, and it happens sometimes. You go through stretches like that, and it just seems like everybody's trying to do too much because the team is struggling. Like, we got Darren Ruff out here taking pitches down the middle for strike 3 and swinging at pitches 3 feet out of the strike zone to put himself in a bad position. We got Tommy La Stella chasing and striking out. Like, everybody's just trying to do too much when the whole team is struggling. The pitchers feel like they have to be perfect because the offense isn't scoring. The defense, if you make a little mistake, it gets compounded. So there's no doubt that they were struggling in a major way in this series against the Reds. And, you know, it's funny because we talk about the last 2 games against the Mets and how you would think that you could, quote, build momentum based on how those last 2 games went, but they weren't able to carry that into Cincinnati. So it's kind of a knock on the idea of momentum because if they had lost those games against the Mets, you could make the argument that it was momentum from those last 2 games against the Mets that put them into a tailspin and they lost some games against the Reds. But in fact, it was the opposite. They had some good wins against the Mets and they weren't able to carry it over. So I don't know how relevant it is for me to say, okay, they won that last game. Happy flight to Philadelphia and carry some momentum into this next series. Momentum, what is the famous line? Like, momentum starts and ends with the next day's starting pitcher. And I kind of believe that. Like, if your starting pitcher goes out there and gives up a bunch of runs early, you're probably going to lose. Whereas if your starter can go up there and throw out 4 zeros for you, you're in a pretty good position to win. And so it does come down to that tonight. You know, for me, I think that with Kyle Gibson on the mound for the Phillies, he is a quality pitcher. Not really a strikeout pitcher, kind of a contact-oriented pitcher as far as I can remember. I mean, these guys these days, people change, and suddenly you can improve dramatically. But yeah, Kyle Gibson, a little bit below average strikeout rate, but he's good at keeping the ball in the ballpark, does have a strongly above average ground ball rate. And so he can be a type of frustrating pitcher. He's a solid pitcher. And so I would look for him to be a not tough matchup, but a quality arm out there on the mound. But on the flip side, the Giants have Logan Webb. So this is a winnable game today in Philadelphia. The Phillies are scuffling as they kind of annually scuffle. It's an example of a team that gets built up through free agency and underperforms. They got Bryce Harper. They got the catcher, JT Realmuto. They got Nick Castellanos. They got Kyle Schwarber. Kind of all these big name free agents from recent years, and they still haven't been able to translate that into being a above 500 team even. They just lost a tough game yesterday on Sunday Night Baseball. Their record is 21-27. They've lost 3 straight. They're 11-13 at home. So hopefully you can kick them while they're down, right? I just think the Phillies are a talented enough team to win some games, but the results just haven't been there for them. And that's kind of been a theme year after year after year after year. Basically, ever since Kapler was there, they were doing this same thing where they just actually, when Kapler was there, I would say they were doing pretty well. And they had a couple of late season collapses, but they actually started off seasons pretty well. But since Kapler left, they're below 500 teams. So despite high expectations each and every year. Lastly, I just want to point out the Giants continue to be in playoff position. It's worth mentioning this. I feel like we ignore that there's expanded playoffs and the Giants have a 3-game lead over a playoff spot. So as much as it's been frustrating at times, and I would say the first 45 games, my reaction is, because we wouldn't count yesterday in 45 games, and my reaction would have been disappointment. They would have been, if they had lost yesterday, 24-22, and I would say definitely that would be a disappointing first 46 games. But at the end of the day, there are also encouraging signs. Like I said, 5th in weighted runs created plus. The team ERA is much higher than the fielding independent pitching. The defense has been a problem, but I feel like they should be able to get better and not be the worst defensive team in the league, which is what they've played like so far. So that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings you passion, humor, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast Locked On MLB on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name's Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Helps me out a lot. So thanks in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow talking about today's game. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.